everyone. I want to thank you all for coming out for this year's Writers Week BFA reading. We have a great showcase of undergraduate talent here. Before we start, I just want to thank Milena for the opportunity to organize this reading. I also want to thank Tim Bass for his guidance and stern, sometimes very stern, but nurturing involvement and his ability to always keep us laughing. To all of the creative writing department, I can firmly say I've never met a more welcoming, kind, and funny group of people. So without further ado, let's kick it off with our first reader.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenna Johnson. I'm a fourth year student. I'm going to be reading poetry. So this first one is called Motherland Elegy. 22 years ago that dune grew, so tall it became a landmark. The one over there. They say it was a mystery, but I know that a storm shifted the land. There's a sign on the ground claiming it replicates a desert. Is this the largest dune to exist? In the attic, the trunk of withered flowers buried beneath a pile of hand-sewn quilts, prom dresses, batons so tall it touched the ceiling. It resides 3 borders away. If you're lucky, you can get there in a day. Next to the dune is the old tomato field. They say it was a mystery, but I know it was a deer in a summertime drought. What's in the field now? I cannot tell you the story of the robbery. When 6 men carried a chest down to the car, there exists a field where trimmed flowers appear year-round, a field where headstones sprout well before a seed is planted. If you continue down that road, the one by the dune, you'll find you can go no further. There's a bridge made of stones, and it is not safe to travel over anymore. Why haven't they rebuilt it? Our bodies are made of stones too, of baby teeth, of thicker skin, of frail cartilage torn from bone. I was replaced by concrete and permanent anchors, my bones shaved down and polished. This is a true story. At the end of the road, you'll see the ocean has swallowed the land, its belly swollen by dock planks and engines. Are they still there in the ocean? That place, it doesn't exist anymore. The other one, I mean. All that is left is a graveyard, motherland turned foreign, stripped to its memory. And this one's called Montage of a Winter Day in a Suburban Neighborhood. Morning news. Hospitals in Texas are being set up to save the paralyzed turtles that float in the freezing water. They know they need to breathe but cannot lift their heads from the water. Cold air can come as quickly as the fog unfurls in the afternoon. This is a reminder to drink boiling hot tea when it rains to ward off illness. When our scarves are shed at the door, but when our hats are kept on at this home, they muffle sounds that you do not want to hear. My mother finds her windshield scraped by my father when he walked the dog earlier. Do not confuse this to be an act of love. It snows to the west and the north, but never here. Do you wonder if I wish my land would change? I do not crave the snow, but I learned how to paint mountain peaks with watercolors. I dip my brushes in seawater, sand blows across wet paint. Evening news. The northeast front will pass through this weekend. A quiet end to hurricane season increases the likelihood of winter storms. My neighborhood will become so paralyzed by evening gusts that they will forget how to breathe outside of their home. All right, last one. This is originally 2 poems that I combined into one. So, Parable of the Weeds, Overgrown. Summer of hymnals in my ear of squash blossoms, draping ivy, a man in a truck, mustard seeds. I found you one morning, kneecaps in dirt, pulling more than weeds, and I understood then that there were too many roots entangled in my own. Summer of roadside seeds, of fig tree branches, a squash blossom on a pile of crabgrass. Did you also speak in parables? I mean that I cannot understand why you turned me away after I whispered my uncertainty. When I tell you I favor the yard that is overrun with daisies, I mean that I hate the sight of grass clippings stuck to your calves above ankle socks. That you should always leave green-stained shoes on the back porch. Do not track those dead daisy heads through the house. When I leave for my evening walk, I will begin a prayer that I'll forget to end, for I will be too busy walking through my neighbor's overgrown yard to remember.
Hello, I'm Hogan. I'm a sophomore here at UNCW, and I've written a short fiction piece titled How to Build a Doll, and it's written in sort of a journal entry type fashion. So, September 27th. Ah, what a day, what a day. Samson finally found the courage to ask me out. It was a dream come true, to say the least. He didn't treat it like anything formal or fancy. It was a mere, would you like to get dinner sometime? Us girls know how guys like to dance around the subject matter like that. Of course, there was no one to share my over-the-moon excitement with afterwards but my measly little journal. As mentioned in almost every journal entry before, I really don't have so-called friends. All the girls in my high school hate me for looking so good. They say Alice is going to set herself on fire if her hair gets any redder. And little Miss Cooper's stupid doll face is all my brother talks about. I can't really help it if I was born with long, mesmerizing red hair and sea blue eyes. I guess that's what most guys are into these days. But I digress. Samson has played trombone in the school band for almost 3 years now. He's quite tall and has red hair like me, but his is quite shorter. He has great arms. Oh, let me tell you. Super strong. And he doesn't even play a sport. His arms are perfect. I wish he would just wrap them around me, and I'm sorry, I keep daydreaming while I'm trying to write. We had discussed going out to a fancy new farmhouse restaurant over text messaging. Sorry, I forgot to mention he had asked for my number a while back, but I assumed that was a given. And that's what we eventually did. I wore my blue and white checkered dress. I thought it gave me that country girl look. You always have to dress for the occasion, my dumb mother used to tell me, but she was right. Samson didn't exactly dress up as much as I did, but he did wear what I like to dub church clothes. Some tan khaki pants and an orange collared shirt. He ordered some breakfast, toast, eggs, sausage, etc. for dinner, and I ordered something along the lines of chicken and dumplings. I'll definitely have to make that place a regular. Anyway, I finally managed to convince him to come to my house later that night. Now, my house is nothing too special. It's a white, one-story house and looks nothing short of dull. There is a garage attached to the right side, but I don't own a car since I'm in walking distance of everywhere in the city. There are a few droopy trees which love to dangle and try to touch the roof, but are just short of doing so. My dumb parents left me to fend for myself a long time ago, but I have my ways of getting money. A job would certainly help, now that I think about it, but who has time to get a job nowadays? Samson and I sat and played a few card games. We really just enjoyed spending time together. He eventually found the perfect time to put his arms around me. His arms were so perfect I wanted to scream. What girl wouldn't? I then decided it would be the perfect opportunity to share some of my famous tea with him. I boiled some water on an oven eye and decided some Elvis on the Bluetooth speaker would help set the mood. Stuck on You was the first song in the playlist, which seemed appropriate, I must say. I'm afraid I can't describe my secret tea recipe in here because it's a secret. Nice try, dum-dums. I gave him one green teacup I found in the cabinet while I found a clean pink one. Two of the same color would only make it difficult, and we can't be getting those mixed up. I watched him scarf down the entire cup and smile. He said it was delicious. I was flattered, of course. Every girl likes to be complimented, especially on their cooking abilities. We watched some television, his arms still propping my head up. It was about that time Samson said he was getting extremely tired and needed to start heading home. I begged him not to and told him he was more than welcome to stay with me for the night. After a few more moments of begging and pouty face, as I've learned it's called, he surrendered, defeated. Sooner than later, he fell asleep on the couch. I can't tell you how cute he looked lying there. A Big Ol' Hunk of Love was the current song that was playing at that moment. Sorry I keep describing the music. I really like Elvis, though. I went to the fridge and pressed the crushed ice button 3 times and the water button twice, which opened the panel behind the fridge. It swung the fridge to the left, which left just enough room for me to squeeze in the room behind it, just to make sure everything was prepared. I then went to Samson and pulled him off the couch by the legs. He hit his head on that coffee table, which looked like it hurt. Ouch. I apologized to him, but I forgot he couldn't hear me. I then dragged him to the room behind the fridge. By the way, I'm sorry I keep using I all the time. Then again, there's no correct way to write in a journal, right? So just please excuse my incessant ramblings. My mind tends to wander quite a bit. I then pulled Samson up to the table. I have set up with restraints on the wrists and ankles. Yes, I know what you're thinking, but no, this isn't that type of room. Thank you very much, bunch of dum-dums. A few slaps across the face, and he was good as new. Wakey, wakey, cutie pie, I said. Always love saying that to guys. It's always been romantic in the movies and shows, so why shouldn't it be romantic in real life? Samson's arms made up for the very loud mouth he had on him. I watched them bulge with muscle as he strained against the cuffs. I really don't know why he was screaming at me so much. He should be grateful to be with a girl like me. But hey, even when he was screaming, I have to admit, he was quite the cutie. I tried explaining what was happening, but he just kept screaming and yelling, and it was really, really annoying. I usually enjoy keeping them conscious during this so I can see their beautiful eyes watch me do my magic, but Samson was just being rude at this point, calling me names I don't really want to reiterate in here. So I knocked him out with a nearby rubber mallet instead. I admit, his muscles were so frickin' big, it took me more than 5 minutes to cut through them. The love songs outside of the room definitely helped to pass the time. Hey, just a tidbit for any of you lonely ladies out there. The place I found to be the easiest was about halfway through the armpit. Now, the blood squirts don't tend to bother me. In fact, I sort of like them. They feel like the spray of water when you ride a boat or some type of water ride in an amusement park. I would assume Samson died soon after due to blood loss, but I guess I'll never know since he never woke back up to tell me. What a dum-dum. Of course, the arms went into the box labeled The Perfect Boy, along with Jeremy's crystal brown eyes, Ralph's chest, who else do you know with an 8-pack, and John's teeth. I've yet to find someone with the perfect heart or brain or a few other parts, but that's a problem for later. Once I get everything sorted and everything I need, I'll start the assembly process and just sort of hang around until a thunderstorm comes by. Hopefully it'll happen just like that book we read in Mrs. Henderson's English class. I heard You're the Devil in Disguise, which I couldn't help but sing with since it's such a good song. I would like to tell you what I ended up doing with the rest of Samson's body after I finished my handiwork, but no one really ever tells their journal everything.
Hi, I'm Kapasakis. I'm a senior here, and I'm going to read you 3 poems. Ashake. You can't walk barefoot across the city on a Sunday morning after you peel yourself off the sticky linoleum and smooth down the unkempt curls. The aching body and scarlet toes beg you to leave them be, but you know if you do, you'll step into fragments of phantasma from the night before, when you became the girl in the perfume ad, with the perfect eyebrows, hair, life, who smolders at you from the coffee table in the dentist office. The night before, when you left your voice in forbidden mailboxes, and left your purse in the bathroom with that girl you didn't know who said she really liked it. Toe ball heel, the high school dance instructor screams inside your head as you clobber down the cobblestone. Plies turn into pausing to catch labored breaths as you make your way throughout the jackhammering crowds. Metatarsals crumbling to dust and making the man whistling at you cough. Oh, how you wish you could walk barefoot through the city, but then that would only make the agony worse. This one is called No Chopper is Coming to Save Me. They must not have seen it coming. The only thing they must have known was here 1 second, gone the next. A paradise of paradises, then gone. A crater in the universe, the great what was. A burnt pile of twigs the morning after a bonfire. A ring around a bathtub. A minuscule hole in a wall where a thumbtack once trapped a poster for Jurassic Park. Life finds a way, Goldblum said. But what if life wanted to get away for a while, I asked. What if life took a gap year to find itself, backpacking through the bustling universe, crashing on couches the next cosmos over? I think life got tired of the rat race, needed to switch it up. Life will get tired of us soon too, no matter how hard we try to stop it. The Tyrannosaurus will always kill the raptors. I'm not the final girl. There will be no miraculous rescue. Only Laura Dern and the cockroaches will survive when our comet comes to take us the way of our forefathers. I wish that life liked me enough to get me off the island too. And this last one is called 8:37 a.m. Spines pressed against each other, lumbar to thoracic. I'm curled tight like a fetus, and you're lounged and splayed on your side like a king and my queen. You hate me in your sleep, I always tell you. I roll in close and you roll away. We start tightly tangled, and somehow, when I wake up, first, always first. We've unwound and each taken a blanket. My feet are freezing, and all I want to do is slot them between your thighs, but then you would wake up, and you'd roll back to me, arms reaching out like roots hugging the ground, and it would take all day for me to forgive myself for being the rooster's crow that interrupted your REM. So instead, I'll focus on the point where our backs touch, let the heat radiate, and pray it reaches my freezing feet, writing poems for you in my head while I wait for you to reach out.
I'm Sarah. I am a senior and a half, and I am going to read a piece of creative nonfiction titled You're a Lesbian Woman. The first time you're a lesbian is when you're 8 years old playing with your friends at recess. A kid across the front fence shouts dumbass lesbos at you, and you understand dumbass to mean dumb donkey. You had just learned that ass means donkey. Your friends don't react, they don't seem bothered by it, but you're a goody two-shoes who loves to tattle. So immediately you go to your teacher, who is obviously all-knowing, and you ask her what a dumb donkey lesbo is, and you don't get a clear answer. You are dismissed, feeling the shame associated with the word lesbo for the first time. The second time you're a lesbian is when you're in 4th grade and you wonder if your classmate's vulva looks like yours. This question stays on your mind for decades, yes, decades, and you are ashamed of this. It isn't until you're much older that you realize you had a crush on her. Why else would you wonder what her pussy looked like? The third time you're a lesbian is in the locker room changing for gym. You stand in the corner staring at the wall, praying to a God you don't believe in, that the girls don't think you're checking them out. When someone raises a suspicion, you move to the bathroom to change in the accessible stall. It's bigger and provides more privacy than the plastic shower curtain that hangs over the never-to-be-used, stale water-smelling shower stalls. The fourth time you're a lesbian is when you share a bed with your best friend at a sleepover and you wake up from a dream in which you were kissing her. You find yourself with your mouth plastered to her arm. She is rightly confused. The fifth time you're a lesbian is when you start holding hands with your friend in the hallway and they hold your hand back. You two spend a lot of time holding hands over the duration of middle school. You'll also cuddle, kiss each other on the cheek, and slow dance at cotillion class. When they get their first boyfriend, you are jealous. You stake your claim with him immediately. They will always love you more. The sixth time you're a lesbian is when a weird guy in your driver's education class keeps inviting you to prom, and your best friend, who is not your boyfriend, or even a boy, pretends to be your boyfriend, and you love it. When they call you babe, your heart soars and a smile sprouts from your cheeks. Who knew you were in love with your best friend? You didn't. The seventh time you're a lesbian is when you date a boy and he asks to hold your hand. You have a panic attack that leads to a quick and efficient breakup. The eighth time you're a lesbian is when you date him again, and it finally kicks in that you don't, in fact, like men. The ninth time you're a lesbian is when you kiss a girl for the first time, and the world stops turning, and it feels like your cheeks are stuck in the upright position, and nothing else gives you adrenaline that kissing her did. It's when you go on your first date ever, and it's to the movies with her entire family. There are 3 brothers and 2 parents, all of them wearing matching outfits to see a Star Wars movie. And you make out in the back row. Her family is 3 rows ahead. The 10th time you're a lesbian is when you're looking at colleges and you find a historically women's college where almost everyone likes girls, and you're a girl, or you think you are, and you get accepted to the school. You tour the campus and feel at home among the sea of probable lesbians. The 11th time you're a lesbian is when you meet a girl there. You meet a girl on Twitter who also got accepted there. She is pretty and has bright red hair, and she is impossible to get to know. 3 hours passes in no time, and you are still on the phone. She is funny and witty and smart, and she makes you fall in love fast, faster than you ever thought you would. The 12th time you're a lesbian is when you drive 5 hours to admitted students weekend, and you meet the redhead who is just as funny and smart and witty as she is on the phone. She knows exactly how to make you laugh and how to make you keep laughing. You meet a blonde there she is also smart and funny and sweet, and maybe, just maybe, she wants to marry you, or she thinks she does. You break up with the redhead, and she doesn't really understand how to be in a relationship. Commitment issues, you know? The blonde is your first real girlfriend. She is also your first real lesbian relationship, meaning it's long distance. The 13th time you're a lesbian is when you start at that school and the redhead is there, the blonde is not. But the redhead is better as a best friend than a girlfriend. Instead, there are 2 new girls who have joined the cast. A curly-haired softball player and a chapstick-obsessed lesbian who changes your life. The 14th time you're a lesbian is when the chapstick girl kisses you for the first time and she tastes like the original Burt's Bees, peppermint. After 3 hours, roommates come knocking, breaking the blissful bubble that you two are living in. The 15th time you're a lesbian is when your peppermint-lipped lover comes out to you as butch, something that was expected but exciting. You're a femme lesbian, you discovered that years ago, and with her you fulfill Sappho's prophecy, the sacred relationship between butch and femme lesbians. You are going to marry her, you also think that you two would stand the test of distance. You don't. The 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd, and 23rd times you're a lesbian is a quick succession of inconsequential bedmates. Some happen so quickly that you wonder if you should even include them. They matter so little, but that they are nothing but names on the notes app of your phone. You hope they're not listening now. The 24th time you're a lesbian is a doozy. He is masculine. Pronouns are just words after all. He is non-binary and gender fluid. All is well until the relationship continues. You can't say you hate men, I'm right here. As 7 months pass, you try to shove your lesbianism down. You try to change who you are to fit his identity, even as he says he's a man. The first time you realize you're a lesbian is when you break up with him. You feel your heart take flight as if riding in the centerfold of a paper airplane. You download dating apps while he cries in your bedroom to his mom. Yes, you do think this is weird. You swipe through Bumble, you click through Hinge, and on a whim, you message someone on Lex. Their post says, "The mask everyone is in search of. I'm the butch lesbian of your dreams." You message him that he does in fact sound like your dream, and you are right. The second time you realize you're a lesbian is when you say yes to a life with the butch of your femme lesbian dreams.
Hi, I'm Holly Walker. I'm a fourth year, and I'm going to be reading 3 poems. This one's called 7 a.m. The alarm of the crow sounded off, cautioning those around that the human resurfaced once again. Trash went out today, and with no socks on, I scrambled on pavement bare, hauling the bag into an army green trash can. Birds chirped from the opposite end of the front lawn, yelling their warnings. The humans seemed to have no backup. Morning woke, and the sky was cold baby blue. The moon was still awake. I wondered why she couldn't sleep. But the moment was quiet, the only sounds from the occasional dog bark, the insects and their music, and the cats speeding past the little white house. I went inside, and the birds went back to their nests. The second poem is called Coffee-Stained Curls. There was a bookstore I took you to for the very first time, just to watch your eyes light up like 2 full moons, grazing a finger down each spine of the vintage novels and melding the titles gently, lips softly pressed together with every P and every B. You crisscrossed applesauce in front of the poetry shelf and Joyce Carol Oates, and you looked like a fairy with coffee-stained curls swirling down your bare back. I don't believe in sleeves during the summertime, you told me, while we rode our bikes, freckled skin covered in the sunlight. And the last poem is called I Wanted to Kiss You Too. After meeting her, it was settled I liked women. It was an aha moment where everything before just started to make sense, like the jokes in high school made by those who thought they knew me better than I knew me. They were right in the end, and maybe I didn't really know myself. I was in my early 20s at a Halloween party, freshly single, dressed in mint green fairy wings and a yellow tube top. She told me about her first time making love to a woman. I saw the memories swirling in her dark pupils. There was one open window that allowed midnight to watch us. We exchanged toothy grins while under the influence of bright red spiked punch. She told me she could kiss me right now. I just looked at her, thoughts drenched in liquor and starlight, and how her skin would feel against my lips and against my heartbeat.
Hi, I'm Nitya Budamagunta, and I'm a sophomore, and I'll be reading a fiction piece called As It Rains. A ceiling blanketed by pink-gray storm clouds greeted Neil as he entered the university's English building. He didn't want rain, but it always rained here. He dreaded the hours he spent in that morning arranging his hair going to baste. This was his redo, a parallel world where everything was the same, save for the indoor rain and his secured job. He could go back, the Rubik's Cube that brought him here pressed against his thigh like a knife in his pocket, taunting him. But no, he chose to save the prim-pressed suit and tie accomplished image he built, twice now in both worlds. He picked up chalk and wrote the title of the class's reading as the students filed in. All right, he said, does everyone have a copy of Celsius 232? The students frowned. Most desks stayed empty. From lack of book or the foreboding rain, Neil couldn't tell. For those of you who've read till chapter 3, Neil said, what were your thoughts? Jay, a student who sat at the front of the class, raised his hand. He was the most engaged in the class, in both worlds. Neil was wary of him. I enjoyed it, Jay said. I appreciated the author's use of color to symbolize the character's emotions. Neil nodded. Any other opinions? He said. No one raised their hand. Neil moved on to the next question. Since Jay mentioned it, did any of the other colors stand out to you? Once again, Jay was the only one to answer. These discussions usually went well. When he picked the class on obscure classics, he was met with great interest. He didn't think it would sour in this world. After an awkward 40-minute discussion, he let the class out early. Jay walked over to him. I was just wondering why we weren't finishing Of Wolves and Women, he asked. Neil changed the class's reading for this world after the mishap the last time. Since Neil made the change, his email was flooded with disappointment about not finishing the book about the two eccentric friends. Rereading it again, Neil said, I realized that the book was not very rewarding to discuss. He had rehearsed this answer prior. Celsius 232 is more applicable to our curriculum. Jay nodded. Neil wasn't sure if it was blind belief or suspicion. I was also wondering, Jay said, if you were working on another novel. I really liked the one you published. I'll keep you posted, Neil said. He needed to make sure the instance that got him fired in the other world didn't repeat before he published another book. Jay nodded and left. Neil made his way outdoors. He didn't want to get caught in the rain with his newly pressed gray suit. He pulled out a Rubik's Cube. It stayed the way he left it, mostly solved with one edge rotated, green on the left, red on the right. Neil's wife called him. He didn't pick up. Instead, he flipped through Celsius 232. The first and only time Neil read Celsius 232, he was in college. It was a book he considered unremarkable in every way. The themes in the lackluster dystopia about a guy being deemed a hero for throwing books into his fireplace were half-baked and unclear. Reading it with fresh eyes under gray clouds and fluorescent lights, he was left impressed. His collegiate mind missed the irony that the character who believed that books destroyed humanity killed 13 library workers. It was the kind of idea he would come up with now. He pulled out his notebook and copied the page to use in his next novel. He looked forward to circulating this brilliance in his own work. A ping signaling an email paused his transcription. He placed the Rubik's Cube in the novel as a bookmark. It was a checkerboard pattern. The sender was Jay. Jay reminded Neil of himself, analyzing books with a depth that others lacked. In the 4 years Neil had been teaching, Jay was the only student to read his novel. That was why he thought it was safe to teach the similar Of Wolves and Women. Dear Professor, the email read, I know you said Of Wolves and Women was unsatisfying to discuss. I disagree. I think watching the friendship develop throughout the story in spite of societal expectations is really cool and relevant. It also has the same tone as your novel, so it would be a good way to market it. I beg you to reconsider. Neil agreed with Jay. Of Wolves and Women was so brilliant, it earned a spot in his own works. But as much as Neil loved the book, his job and his image were more important. His wife called again, and he let it go to voicemail. She was his wife, but she wasn't his wife. He didn't know how to act around this copy of her. This wife was not the person who he shared ice cream with every Sunday under a picnic shelter, or the person who he offered his coat to when it stormed at the beach. His palms itched to pick up the Rubik's Cube, now shifted to a Tetris Z, a row of green at the center and at either corner. He knew if he solved it, the cube would carry him back home. The purple clouds loomed over Neil as he sat in his university's office building. He sat in his university office, twisting the edges of the Rubik's Cube. Thunder interrupted the YouTube video of instructions that was pulled up on his laptop. The puzzle was surely rigged. Neil could have cracked it by now if it wasn't. As the speaker in the video instructed to solve for one side, Neil chose red, a knock sounded at the door. Jay entered the office, but at the sight of Neil, he stopped. Professor, are you all right? Jay said. Are you sick? Do you need anything? I'm fine, Jay, Neil said. Why would you think that? It's just, you were wearing a raincoat, and I worried you came down with a bad cold or something. Jay shook his head. Sorry, never mind. Neil forgot that people here didn't wear raincoats. He ran into the same confusion with his wife when he first got here. Once again, he grimaced at the fact that these people were not his people. He shrugged off the raincoat and refolded the collar of his crisp white shirt. Did you need anything? Neil asked. I noticed that you drew a lot of inspiration from Of Wolves and Women for your book, Jay said. Neil's fidgeting hands froze on the cube. I have, he said, though I've improved a lot since. It wasn't really my best work. I loved the friendship, in both books, Jay said. They resonated with me. Well, in that case, you might as well stop reading Of Wolves and Women, Neil said. The ending is quite devastating. I don't think it can be as devastating as your novel, Professor, Jay said. Neil hoped Jay wouldn't finish Of Wolves and Women. Jay didn't understand the importance of Neil's duty to society. When Neil walked into class, the blanket of pink-gray clouds pelted water onto his navy suit, turning it to black. Jay stood at the chalkboard, waiting for him. I finished Of Wolves and Women, Professor, Jay said quietly. Neil's body heated despite the rain-cooled fabric sticking to his skin. What did you think? Neil said. Jay stayed silent. I thought the ending of your book was so unique and brilliant, the way the two friends fought and how one betrayed the other. I thought that was your work. What are you insisting, Jay? Neil said. You stole from Of Wolves and Women, Jay said, line by line with only a few words changed. That's not true, Neil said. It's different. It's placed in a different context. And I thought you were such a great writer. How are you stupid? How are you so stupid to teach a book you stole from? They're ideas, Jay, Neil said. I gave it a new life. Please, you're making this a bigger deal than it is. Jay scoffed and stormed out of the room. Neil's wet socks clung to him like swishy squids, and his hair dripped water right into his eyes. He ran outside into the sweltering dry heat, twisted the Rubik's Cube. Red, yellow, blue, orange, white, red, green, blue, red, purple. Purple did not belong on a Rubik's Cube. This was a new occurrence, and this meant the cube couldn't be solved. Neil couldn't go back to his world. Neil couldn't leave the rain. Jay once again accused him of stealing, which meant soon the rest of the school would too. Unless... Neil thought back to the two friends in his book, how one of them lured the other into a knife so she could keep a secret and save the community. Jay knew, but Jay was the only one who knew. If he was careful, he could make sure it stayed that way. Neil could continue to give forgotten works a new life. He could make sure he kept his job.
Hi everyone, I'm Savannah Schulze. I'm a junior. I've got two things to read for you today. Apologies. The first one is called Canine Arteries. Thoughts of you do not echo, they reverberate inside my head. That is to say, they are haphazard with no direction or call. That is to say, they arrive with clangs of hope and sear false memories into the sides of my skull. That is to say, I think it would be easier if I had not met you. That is to say, I wish I had met you later or earlier or at a time when we are healed from things we cannot yet name. That is to say, I wish I did not think of the smell of hope when I think of you. That is to say, we do not know what we are hoping for until it is gone. That is to say, I forgot to sew up the holes in my hands. That is to say, I thought I meant something to you. That is to say, I thought I had power over you. That is to say, I do not want to lie with I love yous anymore. That is to say, you meant something to me. That is to say, I think about driving across the Michigan time zones and the glitch in the clock on the dash. That is to say, when you said you could make this space beautiful, I thought it was an offer. That is to say, it was a challenge. That is to say, there are fires burning in my mind. That is to say, brain matter flows from my ears and slowly drips down my neck. That is to say, I wanted something I was not allowed to have. That is to say, there are teeth in my heart and on my hands, and love is not efficient with canines inside your arteries. That is to say, I thought the longing in your chest was the same shape as mine. This one is a little less dramatic. Burning inside the sun. A light and a fuchsia glow, his hands that have touched every corner of the universe caress my cheek. I know him by those eyes and this sloping nose. But you have gazed upon another face. Basked in the words of a longing soul, he stood at the end of the world with me by his side and asked me to join him on his quest for something worth dying for. In the mulch yard of a college party, he says to me, at Christmas we spit watermelon seeds into January. I want to say I don't need a box spring, just a mattress on the floor and your keys on the hook by the door. If the world had not split in two, and if I had never towed that line, I would have never left his side. It looks like home, but it is not, and it smells like home, but it is not. He says, I am burning up a sun just to say goodbye, and expected me not to cry. His side, where the echoes of his longing covered me in a familiar warmth, like a child's favorite blanket. I would face it all again if it meant I could hold his hand in mine once more.
Taylor gave me specific instructions on how to do that. My name is Campbell. I'm reading a nonfiction piece called Writing Lily, and I'm a senior. I was reading Oscar Wilde when I saw her. It was in my car in the parking lot of a rundown department store while I wasted time for 3 o'clock. She had the baby strapped to her chest, nimble fingers shaking with the wet wipes lid. I tend to romanticize, so I made a story for her. I figured she was a single mom, probably had a deadbeat father for baby, something adjacent to The Maid or Where the Heart Is. I knew she was struggling. I didn't have to write that part. While I watched her ritual of changing diapers and speaking aimlessly to the infant, I considered how I would probably never see her again. And for the first time in months, I cried. Not because she was ravishing and I was in love with the beauty, but because her mannerisms and worn expression told me that this wasn't a sustainable life. Let's call her Lily. So when Lily parks her car and changes her baby's diaper in a dirty parking lot, so mindless that she doesn't notice my regretfully invasive watching, I'm forced to bear witness to an eternity of maternal suffering and one sly exchange, whilst reading Wilde write homoerotic sentiments to a portrait of a beautiful boy. The irony and the contrast doesn't escape me. Lily disrupted my life as if I stumbled upon her like a grotesque rom-com, except instead of an exchange of words, she gifted me with the spirit of spiral. I knew I would write about her, be it in prose or poetry, because I knew that things were built to break and lonesome mothers were created without empathy in mind. Approaching Lily from a writer's gaze behind windshield and dash is a cruel way to render her human, but I cannot help myself. I know I'm not the first person to see something that wasn't meant for my eyes and drain it of its authenticity for the purpose of my fictitious endeavors. I've been prophesized by centuries-old writers, living now so dangerously with divergence from my source material. I am forced to write Lily. And so, as the story goes, I begin to feel immense shame. It's as though the world is a gentle beauty through which we deny the powers that could be. I'm often afraid that if this world is indeed an oyster, I might be one in an army of parasites attempting to slide between the calcium and suck life from its contents for the sake of a selfish survival. I'm a masculine parasitical. I'm dirty and ugly, and I wreak havoc. I bleed this cosmos to my inspire. I'm a wrong soul, but I'm self-aware. And Lily is there, baby on her chest like armor, tacked as penance for my atrocities. And this is a selfish statement, but often the things that feel the most real are the things that are which the most egotistical. I'm a writer of suffering, and in order for me to succeed, others must suffer to prove my work honest. And while I wrote lines about Lily in the small black journal I keep in my pocket, she was begging her spiritual author to ease her out of the pain that she had been damned to. I hope there's a force greater than myself, one actually writing Lily, who can take the blame for her poorly dealt hand. Or maybe Lily is truly grand, and I'm nothing more than a foolish boy making foolish assumptions of a woman for the sake of self-pity. Maybe we're both being written to suffer. I don't believe there's a right answer, but for the sake of Lily, I'm willing to take the consequences if I fail to see the truth. For the sake of Lily, I will tell you all a story about her, in the hopes that she lives beyond her maternity in the minds of literary strangers, where she can be rewritten to live freely. May we go celebrate the lilies, and may we allow our muses to sing.
Hi everyone, I'm Barret, Giehl. I'm a second semester student here at UNCW. And I'm going to be reading a piece of poetry called How I Disregard the Things I Thought I Knew for You. I consider life ending. I consider what you believe happens after life. I consider reincarnation. Consider what I believe. I consider decay. I consider my body turning into nutrients for plants. I consider plants feeding animals. I consider plants and animals feeding other animals. I consider plants and animals and other animals dying and feeding the earth and feeding plants and animals and other animals. And I consider the universe. I consider that everything operates based on the same rules, the same laws, and that everything in the universe is cyclical, and forces like gravity and magnetism push and pull things together regardless of their will. I consider the law of conservation of mass. I consider the first law of thermodynamics. I consider that if matter can neither be created nor destroyed, that if energy can neither be created nor destroyed, perhaps that's reincarnation. I consider how we ended up together. I consider soulmates. I consider souls. I consider that we met hours away from either of our homes. I consider that our homes are in adjacent towns. I consider the daycare I went to in your hometown. I consider that we were there together without knowing it. I consider that you remember seeing the stuffed piglet suction cupped of my grandmother's station wagon window. I consider how we almost met when your freshman roommate invited me over for the night. I consider an impromptu party I threw in my dorm the next year. I consider my friend asking if he could bring a girl he'd been talking to all summer. I consider how you avoided meeting up with a guy all summer and finally relented when he invited you to an impromptu dorm party. I consider that everything operates based on the same rules, the same laws, and that everything in the universe is cyclical, and that forces like gravity and magnetism push and pull things together regardless of their will. I consider that stars and planets and solar systems and galaxies all orbit one another before eventually colliding. I consider that perhaps two people orbiting each other until they collide as soulmates. I consider religion. I consider the impossibility of knowing. I consider belief. I consider that you believe in something. I consider that people have believed in something since they understood that they didn't understand everything. I consider that everything operates based on the same rules, the same laws, and that everything in the universe is cyclical, and that forces like gravity and magnetism push and pull things together regardless of their will. I consider that the universe is the higher power that people insist exists. I consider that the universe is God. I consider how contrived this sounds. I consider that I am willing to sound contrived for you. I consider that as a teen, I had considered pretending to believe so as not to hurt God's feelings, just in case. I consider that I chose not to do that for God. I consider that I would do anything for you, including finding a way to believe in something.
Thank you, readers. Wonderful. Stern to stern. I'm going to deal with that for the next 45 minutes to an hour. Thank you, Alden. Thank you all for being here. On the way up here, we were walking up with Melissa Crow, and I was saying, I'm not sure how well attended it's going to be. She said, I know the BFA reading is always one of the highlights of Writers Week, and sure enough it is. And attendance is great. I appreciate you coming out. I see so many people from the halls, and I see so many people from the classes, and faculty members are here, and the wonderful support. Graduate students are here, former BFA students who are now in grad school. It's good seeing all of you. It's good feeling this support that all of you have for each other and for this group. And we had Oscar Wilde and lesbian lust and dismemberment. In other words, just another day in the creative writing major. As we call it, Tuesday, right? If that's too weird for you, put your seatbelts on. It gets weirder, doesn't it? Help me out. The next event is tonight at 7. So where is it? Is it in Lumina Theater again? It's in Lumina Theater tonight at 7. So you want to make sure that you take advantage of this week as much as you possibly can, because this is your week, this is our week, and we don't have this kind of thing in a lot of universities, so squeeze the sponge as much as you can. Don't prepare in advance, just go and go cold and enjoy whatever it is that they're doing. Last night was fantastic. This was fantastic. The craft discussions, take advantage of all of it. I'm so happy to see you here, so happy to be a part of this, this wonderful event. And our thanks for a couple of things in particular. First of all, to the Writers Week organizers for building the BFA reading into the infrastructure of Writers Week and making it a part of what Writers Week is, because we know that this is the highlight of Writers Week. And don't tell the visiting writers, but it gets lower after this, but this is awesome. And also to Alden and Taylor for putting this together. They contacted me weeks ago about doing this and putting this together. They've done a beautiful job. It is not easy standing up here. If you're young and you're just trying to get your sea legs, I'll tell you where that comes from in a second, but you're trying to figure it out. You want to be up here, but you don't want to be up here because it's exciting but freaky, and it's a real risk for people to come up and read their work, especially to a bunch of judgmental critics like all of you are, who all think you can do it better. Well, let's see. And it's a little nerve-wracking, and people are taking personal risks to read such honest work, and I have a lot of respect. And I'm sitting there going, I can't believe they're so young, except for Barret, he's not that young. Barrett's like 77, but sorry about that. Barret will take his teeth out and bite me with it. It's such a good bunch of people who are here giving of themselves to you, and it's terrific writing. And if you're not familiar, if you're a visitor and you're not familiar with the writing that goes on in our department, there's your sample. And there's a lot more of it that's happening. And some of it's weirder too. And I say stick around because there's nothing that these undergraduates can't do. It's a big week. It's a good week. It's a bad week. And it's a weird week. And Philip Gerard would have been here because he loved the undergraduate program very much. And if you knew him, you're lucky. Count yourself lucky. If you took a class with him or were taking a class with him, count yourself very lucky. And if you didn't know him and you're a major or a minor in creative writing, or you just take a class in creative writing, you're lucky. Because that program, this major, and the master's program wouldn't be here without him. It's not overstating it. It's not trying to ascribe something to him since we've lost him. It's the truth. And it goes back to the mid-90s when he was sitting in his office planning it and working out the machinations of what has become what first was a master's program that then led to a department and a BFA major. We're all lucky because of Philip. And if you didn't know him and you didn't have his class, the sea leg thing that I mentioned a few minutes ago, I heard him say it because he was a sailor. And the idea of getting your sea legs means learning how to stay balanced when things are weird. It's the worst writing I'll do all day, but I have to say that's what we have to try to figure out to do now, because he was so important to our department, to our major, to our university, and he was connected with writing nationwide through the associated writing programs. And I'll leave you with this. He taught me a lot of lessons, and a lot of things I say in the grammar class, I'm just regurgitating stuff that Philip said to me in grad classes in the 90s, because it was cool then and it meant something to me then, and it means something to me now, and I just go in and repeat it, and I don't give him credit for it, and I should. He loved working with the undergraduate students. He kept telling me, the undergrads are really cool, they're really smart. And I think it surprised him when he worked more with the undergrads. And so he dug it and he wanted to do more of it. I remember something he said, and I'll leave you with this, because everybody who comes to any event at Writers Week should get a little writing lesson. And we talk about this in the grammar class. And he told me this in a writing workshop, and I remember he said, the writing lives in the verbs. The writing lives in the verbs. And it's because the verbs, we know from elementary school, move the action. The writing lives in the verbs. And he said, find the right verbs, use the good verbs, the active verbs, and then move the action with those verbs. And if you use weak ones, it will sag. If you use strong verbs, which you have to work a little harder to do, then your writing will move. And if Philip cared about anything, he cared about his writing, and he cared a tremendous amount about our writing. And he gave a lot, and we owe him a lot. And a way of paying our respects to him can be, every time we write, to find the verbs that move our stories. And I think if you do, if we do, if I do and you, then he would be proud of us. Thank you, Taylor and Alden, for giving me a few minutes here. Thank you all for being here. And can we give this crowd of writers another